host. My name is Elizabeth McGee, and I'm just going to dive right into some more meat, spiritual understandings for these times that are really very serious. And I have a pretty heavy heart tonight, and it's kind of hard because it's so beautiful out, and yet it's Dickens. Charles Dickens was a great classic writer in England about 2 centuries ago, and he had a very famous line, and he always said, it's the best of times and it's the worst of times. And that is really so true. For some people on the planet, it's the best of times. Jesus said that people will still be eating and drinking and giving in marriage at the time of the coming of the Son of Man. So for some people, it's going to be the best of times. But for some people, it's going to be the worst of times. And that's, I guess, sums up a reality that we have to deal with. But for those who it is not the best of times, it is the worst of times. And I'm thinking of my brothers and sisters in Iraq right now. Some of the most horrific things that we have seen in generations, not since Hitler, have we really seen such brutality, ruthlessness, cruelty, beastly, animalistic behavior coming out of a geographic area and a people group. And I just have to ask myself and my brothers and sisters in the Christian community and just good-hearted people, are we going to be, if the Lord tarries, like it was said of the Germans, when 6,000 million Jews were murdered, that we were just like the Germans in Hitler's time when all this brutality is going on and we're silent? I kind of don't really understand the silence. It's been going on for months and it's ramping up. Now, I do believe the press has been a little bit slow in really bringing this front and center into people's, but it's really coming at us now like a freight train. And it's very disturbing. But all that being said, it's totally prophetic. We have no excuse for being asleep, for just eating and drinking and being merry and thinking our bubble is never going to burst. One of the things I ended up with last week was a quote from the book of Enoch. Now, I'm going to start out in the Bible, the good old King James Canon Bible here. But there's something that, again, I want to reiterate. I have to keep stating this. I didn't write the text. Most of the time I'm just quoting straight out of it. Jesus did say when he came, and he continued in a tradition that had been going on since Jeremiah's time, since Isaiah's time, of speaking to the people in parables. And a select group always had the understanding. I've said this many times, and I'm not making this up. There is esoteric understanding. There has always been esoteric understanding on both sides of this thing. But we live in an age where Jesus said, everything is coming out. Everything hidden will come into the light. The secret works of darkness are going to come out, and all of the hidden understandings, the parabolic understanding, the language will be understood, because the saints of the last day, of the last hour, this is what it means when the first shall be last and the last shall be first, because this thing kind of switches on a dime. And the last generation will be the first generation into the millennial kingdom. And we will go in with our eyes wide open. Let me just read from, because I kind of try to not say a lot of things. I have a lot of things that I could say. And I try to not say a lot of things because I guess I still have parts of me, I don't want to offend people. I don't want to freak people out. I don't want to sound like too much of a wacko. But at this point, who cares? If you think, let's just start out with a complete checkup from the neck up. If you think that beheading children and putting them on sticks in public places is anything that a human being would do or that you could be okay with, then we have a problem, which we've always had. This type of brutality is really not new in the whole history of the human race. But when it does crop up to this level, and this is the point, people, this time, the promises of God are this time, the elect, the true remnant, the true sons and daughters, because it says the whole creation is awaiting for this manifestation of the sons of God. We are going to get it. We cannot tolerate this anymore. We cannot. We have to grow up. We have armor since Christ to take this on and to defeat it. And that is our job. Listen, the gospel has gone over into all the earth, people. It's done. A couple people groups. I mean, look, and it's going to happen so fast at rapid speed with our technology and as things start amping up. We got another job to do. We have a much bigger job to do now in the last days, the last generation. Jesus said in Matthew 13, in verse 11, in verse 10 it says, the disciples came to him and asked him, why do you speak to the people in parables? He replied, the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, to the disciples, but not to them, the people. This is whoever has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken from him. This is why I speak to them in parables, because though seeing, they do not see. Though hearing, they do not hear or understand. Because we are not talking about seeing with physical eyes or hearing with earthly ears. We are talking about seeing things spiritually with understanding from God's perspective and what's going on behind the veil. Parabolic language is meant, it always was meant, to couch a spiritual reality in terminology that people could kind of understand: wheat and tares and vines and vineyards and trees, asses and goats and sheep. Okay, these are things that you can relate to, but their deeper understanding was specifically kept as a parabolic language. Now, I didn't write it. Those are the words of Jesus. The disciple, a true disciple of the Lord today, has the Spirit of God and can understand parabolically the language and the understanding and the deeper mysteries and meanings of what's going on. And this is what I ended with in Enoch, because it is coming out. Now, I have no more, things are going so quickly and ramping up. I have no more, it's not like I don't have patience, but people, you have to really make decisions here. The knowledge you need to be a true Berean disciple, and I work that word Berean, I explained, that is not just a normal little word meaning a little people called the Bereans. To be Berean means literally, to be changed, to literally change your whole geneticness from a carnalness to an absolutely spiritual understanding and eventual enlightenment and eventual reality in that. To be Berean. If you are not being Berean, then you are walking in a lower sphere, realm, that is not going to be adequate for what is going to be coming at us front and center. I hope I'm making myself, I'm not trying to talk parabolically. So in other words, if you're not being Berean, if you're not reading the books that are coming back to us that have been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt to have been available, to have been read, to have been accepted by the early church, by the Essenes, by Jesus, by his disciples, by whole pockets of people, by many Jewish sages all through the ages, to the Middle Ages, by our founding fathers, some of the Christians. I just read in the book, do you know the book of Jasher? One was in a lot of Protestant Bibles. I mean, there's so much stuff we just don't know because we're so busy playing Candy Crush or this other stuff that has no eternal value. If you have time to be spending on the internet, you better be spending it getting to know your history, your people group, your promises, and your God, and what's going to come down pretty rapidly and fast. Now, that's all my opinion. I'm entitled to it. This station puts a big disclaimer. This is not there. Anybody can come on this show and do what I'm doing. So whatever. But you have to understand the parabolic language. Sometimes Jesus explained it in the text. So much of this information, these understandings of these parabolic, I've been able to pretty much ferret it out to a large extent. A lot of people online are dialoguing. We're beginning to figure it out because we're just reading. Who said, just read? Who just, Paul says read everything, test everything. You have the Spirit of God. Okay, now that's a rant, but I'm done. All right, because the information is just, because if you're in a war, knowledge is power. You want to keep your enemy or, the other side in total darkness, and the enemy has done a very good job of this. Now, what I really want to talk about today is how we are there. Okay, Jesus said a very important parable, the parable of the wheat and the tares, very common, but he explains, he gives it right there. Let me put it this way. It was recorded in an open book. Because if you do your reading, you will find out from great prophets like Ezra. God specifically said there's knowledge for everyone. There's knowledge for some. And then there's some that's really not quite like a mystery that we just got to hold on to here because it's not quite ready to come out. Well, we're at the place where everything's coming out. And you better not have a religious spirit, and you better not be in such a tight little box that if anything comes and offends you, that you're just, like Jesus, like the disciples when he said, eat my flesh and drink my blood, and they were just offended and out of there. Okay? If you have made Yahushua HaMashiach, the Lord Jesus Christ, your Lord and Savior, and you truly have transferred kingdoms, because that's what this is about, not an intellectual worldview or something, a literal kingdom of darkness to a kingdom of light, then you need to do your homework. You will be responsible. You will stand before the master. This is what some of these parables are telling you. If you're a foolish servant and you hid your little money in the ground, what's he going to tell you? Okay? Enough ranting. So I want to say this, that Jesus said again, he's quoting from Isaiah, though seeing they do not see, though hearing they do not understand, so that it can be said, they will be ever hearing but never spiritually understanding. They will be ever seeing what's going on in the world, like, just like Jude says, people are saying, it's been going on like this forever, No, there's always been an end game. It's never really been that hidden. The fact that it says they will hear, for this people's hearts has become callous. And that word calloused is the sense that there's so much growth over this thing. The living organism that it once was is gone. It's so calcified. It's just a dead shape of something that was once very living. That's a very apt, when you really study something, the pictorial, because Hebrew, a lot of these are very pictorial. The pictorial images are just unbelievable. But let's go in the parable of the wheat and the tares, because Jesus said, I didn't make this up, he said the end of the age, there will be a harvest, because there's been two crops growing. There's been a crop of wheat, there's been a crop of tares. He did not plant the tares. His enemy planted them. Satan, Hasatan, has so many names. I'm going to read you all his different little names. His disguises. Has a seed. It's called the seed of the serpent from Genesis 3. These are boots on the ground. We have to stop intellectualizing and, thinking this is all just some... These are real realities. You think those Christians out in Iraq don't really understand what they're up against? I bet they have a lot more understanding than we do. And they're... Now, I want to go to Jeremiah. I want somebody to understand something, because this was all a revelation to me. One day I really did sit down with the Lord, because he had sort of showed me a verse, and I thought, that's a really interesting verse, Lord. I don't know, there's something really deep there, but I don't really think I get it. So I said, okay. So I'm like, okay, God, let's just unpack this. Let's just start with this little tiny verse, because I think I was just humble. I said, I've heard it a million times, but I bet you there's something really there I never saw before. And lo and behold, I'm still seeing. It's 5 years, I'm still seeing stuff. There are two groups of people on the planet. Everybody who's in the middle, We're all a mixed and mingled seed. I have a whole YouTube channel. I think I have over 40 videos. We're trying to flush this stuff out, unpack these concepts. But there are two seeds growing. There's tares and there are wheats. One was planted. One is sons of the wicked ones. One is sons of God, okay? Sons of the Son of Man, which is a euphemism for Jesus, Yahushua. These are coming, and a harvest means that the fruit is ripe. This is the whole analogy of why would you plant a field if you're never going to harvest it? There's no logic in that, all right? God is very logical in order. He planted a vineyard, Adam and Eve, and there be fruitful and multiply, but something happened in the garden. You have to understand, latter day Gentile Christian, especially in the West. Listen, I grew up in church, or not really grew up in church. When I was born again, I spent about 28 years maybe kind of in churches, okay? Now, I'm done with all that in the sense of, I am the church. Hello, let's get this, people, once and for all. The kingdom of God is within me. I carry the Holy Spirit. I am the church. We are the church. When two or three come together, He is in our midst. We are the church. It's not about your denomination, your tradition, your family background. I don't care if you've been Baptist for 200 years. None of this stuff matters. Do you have a deep understanding? Are you in the kingdom of God? Okay? Do you have spiritual understanding? Do you have spiritual sight? And are you mature? Now, one of the things that, and actually our founding fathers on the good side, because I'll tell you, we have two kinds of father. There's wheat and there's tares, and they've been growing together. So you will always find tares. Wherever you find wheat, you will find tares. That's the thing. Tares have a certain kind of fruit to them. They're wicked, they're evil, they're bad, they're rotten. Wheat has another. Wheat is nutritious and it's healthy and it gives life and it has properties to it. I mean, this is not rocket science. And a lot of people, all right, I can't go to that point. Let me make my point. Because these two seeds, these two plants are coming into harvest, we have to begin to be able to identify. This is the whole point. And people have really studied, again, the pictorial pictures of this thing. If you study out the word tares, and it comes from this word, I mean, there are a couple different kind of plants that could be the tare. Oh, wait, I don't have my notes because I can't really, the Greek, or what do they put it, the Latin word. But it's a noxious plant. It's a poisonous plant. And it gets in, and it grows in the midst of the other crop, be it wheat or barley or, whatever. And it gives off noxious fumes, but that kind of put the surrounding, actually I think they harvest this, whatever's in this, it's a poison. And they can use it, and they've used it on people in a bad way. I should have my notes. My point is, they put you to sleep. They cause a deep, like a drunken sleep, sort of, that you would, people. Next time, I'm going to bring all my notes, and I'm going to have this little piece because it's really interesting, and I kind of got off on that rabbit trail. I didn't want to say this, but the tares do not stand straight up. At the time of a harvest, a tare, this will stand straight up. Basically because its heads, the thing that's filling it, it's very empty. It's empty. It doesn't have any weight. Wheat, fully ripe wheat, will start to bend. It'll start to bow because it's really full. But that's so pictorial. We're going to bow. But who's going to be standing straight up? Proud as anything, defiant as ever? Whatever. Let's go to because you have to understand, this is what I'm going to say again. I have these 5 YouTubes that if anyone's really interested in this and needs to get this revelation, because today, at this point, it's a revelation to us because we've lost it. It's called, in theological jargon, replacement theology. The Catholic Church, by and large, had brought this in by about 300, and they're still running with it. This concept that the church, the Gentile Christians, have replaced Israel in the promises and plan of God. The earlier Protestants re-ferreted out through study of the Word the concept that, no, that's not really totally accurate. Actually, they got it. And the pilgrims in the period that came here initially, and that's why they planted this country in a lot of ways and used the vernacular and the terminology that like we were a city on a hill and that we were the New Jerusalem, because they saw something in the Word. They understood that we are Israel. Now something, and I have 5 YouTubes. I'm going to give you their names, and I'm not the only person saying. There's tons of books, there's tons of YouTubes, there's tons of voices out there. But I'll tell you, 9/10 of the time, they'll never get through an established church door because it upsets the traditions and theologies of men. But you know what? It's going to come crashing down. So you can either do this thing willingly with the Lord, or episode 9 on my YouTube channel is called The Lost Sheep of the House of Israel. You have to understand, Jesus said, I've come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. The house. I've been through all this. House of Israel. Episode number 10, right after that, it is the keys. It's a DVD or a YouTube teaching on the keys that unlock the Gentile church's true identity. Number 11, episode 11, is on the 2 houses of all Israel. Episode 13 and episode 14 are on America in prophecy. Now, this will give you a whole big picture of how big this thing is. And I've been through all this, I don't want to get too much time, but all Israel, all 12 tribes was split. You have the house of Judah in the lower southern kingdom, and you had the northern kingdom, which was dispersed. That seed has gone into all the world, and by and large, by Yahweh's absolutely sovereign, much of that seed, the biggest bulk of that seed is in the Americas, in America, throughout Britain, Northern Europe, and in pockets in the world, okay? This seed has gone out into all the earth, and a large remnant of them came to this country and understood, because there were prophecies that God was going to do this, and in that fulfillment, I'm going to read it to you right in Jeremiah and Isaiah. Oh my gosh, there's so much meat in here, and I don't have the time to get into, but I have other YouTubes. That's what I said. You can go check it out. But listen, I'm in Jeremiah 31, verse 27. The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will plant. See, now listen to this. The house of Israel, which is the northern kingdom, and the house of Judah, which is the southern kingdom, with the offspring of men and of animals. And people, in that verse, there is so much of men and of that word animals. It's the word behemoth. It is the word beast. And this is a word that we are going to get understanding, because this reality is what's coming at us like a freight train. But I won't do that tonight. Just as I watched over them to uproot and tear down, to overthrow, to destroy, and bring disaster, which has really been the history of the northern kingdoms in their dispersion, and the Judah in their diaspora, so I will watch over them to build and to plant, declares the Lord. In those days, people will no longer say, and this is a proverb in Israel, about the fathers having eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. The time is coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. It will not be like, just listen, I didn't write this, but I'm telling you, it will not be like the covenant I made with their forefathers when I took them by the hand of Egypt. That's Moses' time. To lead them out of Egypt, because they broke my covenant, though I was to husband to them, declares the Lord. Now you got to follow closely, because all of a sudden he's talking about Judah and Israel, the 2 houses. He's going to make a covenant with them. And then in verse 33, he jumps and he says, this is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. So all of a sudden Judah's not in this thing. It's just the house of Israel. Israel, America, and you have to think in these terminologies, because this is what's happening now. It's not, don't think man-made states and countries and boundaries. These are ethnic nation groups. Okay? Now remember something, because no one's going to turn me into a racist, and no one's going to twist my words, and you better understand this. There are the house of Israel, by and large, went and mixed with the nations, became Gentiles. They were so mixed. But that house of Israel, the children of Joseph, Ephraim, Jacob put his name on them. When you see Israel, after that time, it is the tribes, the lead tribes of Ephraim with Manasseh and the 10 northern tribes. That is biblical Israel. Where they went, the Lord went with them to do a lot of things. A lot of times to, as he says here, to watch over them, but to uproot, tear down, to overthrow, destroy, and build. You know, you reap what you sow. They got pretty bad. But anyways, he says this is where we are in the new covenant that Yahushua, that Jesus established with the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He said, I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. This is the new birth, people. This is the understanding. We have a spiritual inheritance that has literally changed our genetics. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will a man teach his neighbor or a man his brother, saying, know the Lord, because they will all know me, from the least of them to the great. We're getting there. We will get there. Jesus said they will be one, even as I and the Father one. Now, I don't know how it's all going to happen. It seems pretty daunting to me. I'm like, Lord, don't you know what's going on down here? Be that as it may. He says, I will forgive their wickedness and remember their sins no more. Now, listen. I want people to understand how important it is to understand this house of Israel and Judah, this all Israel, where it is in the earth today, how it's playing out, all those that have attached themselves to it, and how genetically this seed has been mingling, with all these other people groups. So it's been picking up like a snowball going down a hill. Just keeps picking up more and more genetics and seed and mingling with it. Now, in Zechariah, and this is why he changed from talking about the covenant he would make with the house of Israel, which is what's been going on and playing out for the last 2,000 years. We're switching over to Zechariah with the house of Judah. I've always said this. There are two different eschatologies for the two houses, for God to finally get their attention and finally get them to a place where he can really pour out his spirit. The seed, and both of them, so they will manifest themselves in the earth, the sons of God, and do what we have always been called to do, which is to be this kingdom like of Adam, of priests and kings, to defend the defenseless against the bad seed. The seed, this is in Zechariah, the seed will grow well, the vine will yield its fruit, the ground will produce its crops. This is all analogy for the offspring. There will be a generation. I will give all these things as an inheritance to the remnant of this people. As you have been an object of cursing among the nations, O Judah and Israel, so will I save you, and you will be a blessing. Do not be afraid, but let your hands be strong. Now, this is what I have to say. This America, we've been like the prodigal son, the younger son, just squandering our inheritance. Our early church fathers understood this. They understood the other place, that Israel, that we were a place to begin to plant a place out of the dragon's reach for this last days generation, for all these last prophetic conflagrations